the level of the layer. Under the layer, under the layer.
Below the bridge wing. Below the bridge wing.
Para combatentes do canal da guerra. O vídeo que vocês acabaram de ver.
The video you just watched was of a Russian jet buzzing over the United States Navy, followed by NATO maneuvers in the Baltic. What we are going to present today is the fact that NATO might be setting a trap for its own navy in this large water trap called the Baltic Sea. I will show you the strategic scenario with a map. Then, we need to delve into some considerations from the Russian side, which I don't know if are being studied by the students. We have the Baltic Sea, which is this large body of water here, bordering Sweden, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Germany, Denmark, and of course Russia.
A Dinamarca e, claro, a Rússia. Então, o que acontece? A OTAN ela tem aumentado a sua presença no Mar Báltico porque ela sabe da importância, né, dessa região aqui para a Rússia.
From this region here to Russia. But we need to launch a series of considerations that I will present to you now. Well, we need to remember that in the 18th century, a great Russian Tsar, Peter the Great, built the city of St. Petersburg, which was called Leningrad during World War II. And why did Peter build this city? He wanted to expand Russia's contacts with Western Europe and ensure privileged access to the Baltic Sea. The city was built after the northwestern region of Russia was boosted, as well as the local economy, following the Great Northern War against the Swedes.
Na Grande Guerra do Norte contra os suecos. A gente tem que lembrar que São Petersburgo foi uma
We have to remember that St. Petersburg was a city built under Peter's strategic vision because he effectively projected Russia towards the west with the construction of this city. And so, it's an engineering marvel because the region there was very swampy, etc. It was very difficult to build all of this, and it's quite far from the capital, the city of Moscow. And what's important if we look today, the architecture of St. Petersburg is simply fantastic. There are palaces, bridges, extremely refined engineering works. This city is beautiful. So Peter, 300 years ago, already had this strategic vision. However, Peter encountered a problem.
Só que o Pedro ele se deparou com problema. Eu vou apresentar para vocês qual era o dilema estratégico.
I will present to you what the strategic dilemma was that Peter faced at that time, which would only be resolved 300 years later under Joseph Stalin. Follow along with us. What happens? The Russians felt that the following was happening. They had a good fleet here in the Baltic Sea and another in the White Sea, but there was no communication between these two forces. These two naval forces. So what happens? Russia ended up with its fleet divided. The Baltic Sea Fleet, if it wanted to leave, I will show you a larger map now. The White Sea Fleet, if it wanted to go to the Baltic Sea, had to go all the way around here. And vice versa as well. If the Baltic Sea Fleet had to support the White Sea Fleet, they would have to cross all these waters here, which are hostile.
Essas águas aqui que eles são hostis. Mas aí aconteceu fato bastante interessante.
But then a very interesting event occurred. In the 1920s, Norway, aware of the strategic weakness of Russia, the Soviet Union, began making fishing incursions in this region of the White Sea that I will show you. They started making incursions to fish for seals, whales, etc. The Soviet Union didn't have significant forces at the time. The border guard couldn't do much, and the Soviet Union's diplomatic protests to the Norwegian government, remember that Norway is over here, didn't have much effect. Well, then Stalin decided to revive Peter's idea. Let's now show the concept of the Great White Sea Canal. So what happens? The general idea was to create a 227-kilometer canal connecting the White Sea to the Baltic Sea, right? So, this project here, extremely strategic, would unite Russia's two naval forces. Well, as you can see here, the canal began construction in 1931 and was completed in 1933. The Soviets managed to build a 227-kilometer canal in just 1 year and 9 months. We remember that the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal each took almost a decade. It was an engineering marvel. They used prisoners, which is quite controversial, but Stalin managed to fulfill Peter's dream. And then, folks, there begin to be various strategic considerations that many people have not yet been able to perceive.
Que muita gente não conseguiu perceber ainda. Vou mostrar para vocês. Entre 1900
I will show you.
1941,
Between 1933 and 1941, the Soviets transferred 300 patrol ships, 10 destroyers, and 26 submarines between the White Sea and the Baltic Sea. In World War II, as you can see there, the canal was the target of several attacks by the Finns and the Germans. We need to remember that Finland went to war with the Soviet Union on Germany's side in World War II. When World War II ended, the Soviet Union rebuilt the canal, and today they continue to transport and move submarines from the Baltic to the White Sea. So what happens? It's a very interesting thing, because you actually transport submarines by river.
Interessantíssimo, porque você, na verdade, transporta submarinos por rio. É uma façanha, né? É uma façanha por parte dos soviéticos.
It's an achievement. It's an achievement on the part of the Soviets. So what do we notice in history? Now I need to make some considerations regarding the Baltic Sea, if there is a war there. Let's follow along. Well, we put on the map the distance, right, between this coast of Russia here, near St. Petersburg, and the coast, the sea, the shore of Germany. It's about 1,200 kilometers. That's nothing for the missiles that we have in Russia nowadays. So actually, if we really look closely, the Baltic Sea is a huge lake. Although several NATO countries have coasts there, have shorelines, we need to remember that Russia first has missiles, nowadays hypersonic missiles, long-range missiles. There's the Oreshnik that welcomed in Annapolis, in Ukraine, and it has this additional ease, if needed, of moving its fleet from the White Sea to the Baltic Sea.
Sua frota do Mar Branco para o Mar Báltico. Se bem que eu acredito.
Although I believe that if there is ever a war between Russia and NATO in the Baltic, and Russia finds itself in a condition, logically that's the direction to be taken there. But the possibility of NATO's navy meeting its end in the Baltic waters, or there being a mutual destruction of the navies, is very high. When the Soviets designed the White Sea Canal in the 1930s, they considered the military possibility. The canal was logically designed to integrate the two seas, to improve the economic condition of that region of the Soviet Union. But they also thought, always the Russian thought, the Soviet derives from the Russian. We have to remember that the Russian thought always has this strategic vision, always has the dual use.
O pensamento russo, ele sempre tem essa visão estratégica, sempre tem o uso dual. Então, a gente tem que lembrar também desse problema de cabos de...
So we also have to remember the issue of internet cables that run through the Baltic Sea, and also the navigation problem in the Baltic countries region, etc., which would be in a quite difficult situation. In short, it's a strategic dilemma for NATO to operate in those waters, where Russia has had concerns about projection since the 18th century. And we don't know if, without the participation of the American Navy, the other NATO countries, the European countries, would be able to face Russian forces in the Baltic Sea. It's quite likely they wouldn't. So that was our video for today. For those who watched, let's give it a like, share it, post it in tag groups on WhatsApp, Facebook.
Botar no grupo nos grupos de Telegram, WhatsApp, Facebook. Se o pessoal quiser contribuir com Super Sticker ou Super Chat.
If people want to contribute with Super Chat or Super Sticker, I remind you that this helps the YouTube algorithm find us. You can also use Pix to support our channel. I remind you that our channel does not receive funding from NATO. I'll now leave you with a video from our course on Russian wars, which is available at the Arte da Guerra channel's School of Courses, an excellent course. I'll leave the link here in the description. The course is taught by our team, myself, Thelthy, Commander Robinson Farinazzo, and Colonel Marco Coutinho, who makes excellent videos here on the channel. We'll be back shortly. always with responsibility and commitment. Faith in Brazil, folks. See you later.
Compromisso. Fé no Brasil, pessoal. Até mais. Bom, pessoal, eu vou deixar aqui no link da descrição.
Well, folks, I'm going to leave in the link in the description of this video our entire line of books about Ukraine available on Amazon. There's a lot in various languages and formats as well. You'll find things on Kindle in print format, right? What happens? Amazon delivers very quickly, especially for those who live here in the capital, São Paulo. It also accepts bank slips, credit cards, installments, etc. And I remind you, every time you buy books and other items on Amazon, you are helping the Arte da Guerra channel.
Itens na Amazon, vocês estão ajudando o canal Arte da Guerra.
Subtitle by Sonia Ruberti.